57 years, but I still believe that she is with me always. So my next poem is Forgetting You. I toss your name from one corner of my mouth to another, swishing it around playfully, until the froth of memories chokes me. I quickly flush it down back to my heart, where it lays, screaming, yelling, shrieking to come out.
तुम्हें भूलना, उछालती हूँ नाम तुम्हारा अपने मुंह के किसी एक कोने से दूसरे किसी कोने तक, उलीचती हूँ हर तरफ खिलवाड़ में जब तक कि यादों की झाग मेरा दम न घुटने लगे। जल्द अज जल्द निकल जाती हूँ वापस अपने दिल तक, जहाँ पड़ा चिल्लाता रहता है दहाड़ता चीखता बाहर निकल आने को।
So finally, after all the storytelling, I'm not a complicated being. I am as emotional as insomnia out here. So finally, the fifth poem, the last poem that I'm going to read for today, is titled Weather of the Heart. How is today's rain different from the rain that fell yesterday? The sky perhaps grieves the same sorrow, perhaps not. But how does it matter? Yesterday's tears were as salty as today's, the grief as heavy, growing heavier each day. They say weather remains not constant. It's raining as if the sky is torn beyond repair today. But tomorrow, the sky will glow bright blue, shimmering behind the sunny smiles of the sun. Perhaps the sky forgets way too soon and melts too fast. But my soul is no sky, and my heart houses no fickle weather either. Thank you.
मन का मौसम, आज की बारिश कल गिरी बारिश से अलग कैसे है? शायद आकाश फिर से उसी दुख का शोक मना रहा है, या शायद नहीं, भला क्या फर्क पड़ता है? कल के आंसू भी वैसे ही खारे थे जैसे आज के, दुख उतना ही वजनी बढ़ ही जाता है हर रोज। वो कहते हैं मौसम नहीं रहता कभी यकसां, आज तो ऐसे बरस रहा मानो फट पड़ा हो जैसे मरम्मत से परे। पर कल चटक नीला चमकेगा आसमान, सुनहरी मुस्कान के पीछे झिलमिलाता हुआ शायद आसमान भूल जाए सूरज को ही। कुछ जरा जल्दी ही और हो उठे स्वस्थ, पर मेरी आत्मा कोई आकाश नहीं और मेरा मन वहां भी किसी मन मौजी मौसम का घर नहीं।
Before I leave the podium, I would like to thank my translator Aparnaji, who is not here, and Poojaji for this beautiful rendition. Like I said before, Kash maybe Hindi mein likh sakti. And thank you so much, Raza Biennale. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we would always bow down.
Thank you, Chado, for complicating the word of feelings. And now I invite Zebo Mirza, born on 15 December 1964 in Kitab district of Kashkadaria region. She has graduated from Tashkent and has done Uzbek philology, and she has poetry kits, Queen of the Night, Light and Powder. Nowadays she is working at Uzbek Radio Company. In 2016 she won the award of Best Poet of the Year. She was awarded medal in 2018. On December 2018 she was awarded the most active poet by Uzbek Radio Company. She has a son. Most welcome.
minnatdorchiligimni bildiraman. Hindiston bu she'riyatning katta bir yuragi. Bu yerga bizning yuragimiz tutash. Shoir aslida kim? Shoir aslida oshiq degani. Biz shunchaki oshiqmiz. Bu yerda eng buyuk shoirlar o'tgan. Rabindranath Tagore she'rlarini tarjima qilganman. Va bu yerga Dehlaviy yotibdilar, Mirzo G'olib yotibdilar, Mirzo Edil yotibdilar. Demak, shunday bir go'zal davrada she'r aytish oson emas. Bu yerga she'rimni tarjima qilgan Maftuna Raisxo'lovaga o'z minnatdorchiligimni bildiraman. Hozir she'rimni o'qib bermoqchi bo'lgan tarjimonlarga ham avvaldan o'z rahmatimni aytaman. Sog' bo'ling.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। सब लोगों को बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया यहाँ पे तशरीफ आने के लिए। मैं उज़्बेकिस्तान से आई हूँ। मैं असल में शायर हूँ। वो असल में पोएट एक हाथ है। वो ज़िंदगी में ये ज़िंदगी के एक हाथ है। वो ये हाथ, ये पोएट, ये सब लोगों की यहाँ पे इकट्ठे होने के लिए वो इकट्ठे किया है। और
Rahmat. Men siz uchun qayta yaraldim. Yashayapman bir xayol, bir tush. O'tiraman siz uni ushlang. Qo'lingizdan uchmasin u qush. Mening sevgim to qabrgacha. Bilasizmi, siz shuni ayting. Hech bo'lmasa shu bag'rigacha. Kelasizmi, siz shuni ayting.
So I am happy. First time I am giving a female voice here. अनुवादक आकांक्षा सिंह, तुम्हारे लिए फिर से निर्मित हुई है। मैं जी रही हूँ कभी सपने में, कभी ख्यालों में। इसे उड़ने मत दो, मैं प्रार्थना कर रही हूँ। मेरी आत्मा की चिड़िया, मेरे विचारों का पक्षी। मेरा प्रेम जीवित रहेगा अनंत तक। मुझे नहीं पता तुम लौटोगे कि नहीं। सच कहो, अगर तुम्हें पता हो, क्या तुम कभी इस दिल में वापस आओगे?
Keting, sizga ehtiyojim yo'q. Sevib bo'ldim sizsiz o'limni. Yana ming yil yashasangiz ham tushunmaysiz mening ko'nglimni. Kutmang, sizga bermayman ortiq. Umrimning bir lahzasini ham yuragimni yulib tashlayman. Azoblarga topaman chidam. Hech qisa yo'q, yashab ketaman. Sizdan yorug', sizdan balandroq. Nasib ekan so'ngsiz o'limni tirik vujud bilan ko'tarmoq. Qoldirmoqqa urinmang ilhoq. Qoldirmoqqa urinmang illo. Boqmang ilhaq intiq g'amangiz. Menga behad yolg'on tuyular. Ishqqa o'xshab ketgan tamangiz. Nima qilay? Shunday ayolman. Tabiatan va yoki dilim sevsam juda qattiq sevaman. Ruhim, jismim, hayotim bilan. Nomingizga qo'shilib o'sdim. Har tun, har kun mahrum va badar men sizniki bo'lib yashadim. Bilsangiz to shu kunga qadar. Ammo bildim, siz butkul boshqa. Buloqdirsiz, sokin va beg'am. Anglamaysiz, bir kuni aytmang, poyingizda suvsab o'lsam ham. Yo'q, bu ishqni ko'tarolmaysiz. Sizni ezar tahqir va ta'qib. Bu dunyoda eng go'zal sevgi, hamisha xor mahkum mustaqil. Keting, sizga ehtiyojim yo'q. Sevsam, endi sevgum o'limni. Yana ming yil yashasangiz ham tushunmaysiz mening ko'nglimni.
Go away, I don't need you. Being alive is really hard. Even if you live 1,000 years, you won't understand my heart. Don't wait, I will put out my heart. I don't give you anymore even a moment of my life. To the torture, I'll find tolerant. Never mind, I can stay alive. Lighter than you, higher than you. This is not a real life. Love? It is fate to overthrow. Don't try to make me return. Do not stare with desperation. It does break my heart and burn to think your greediness as if passion. What can I do? It's my nature. I am a woman created cordially. With everything I got I care, and love with my life spiritually. Every single day as a tramp, I grew up with your name. I have lived as if I am yours. If only you knew, if only you came. I found out you are another, careless and quiet like a spring. Even if I die, it won't bother you. My death the thirsty will bring. No, you cannot carry my love. You are crushed with insult and pursuit. In fact, a true love is in our life always humbled, always oppressed. Go away, I don't need you. Now only death loves my heart. Even if you live 1,000 years, you won't understand my heart.
Sırağına kirar canımga, çayqalar ko'ksimda olov dengizi. Gulladim sochimdan tirnog'imgacha, men qanday daraxtman, men kimman o'zi? Hatto xayolan ham yonimdan o'tma, hatto xayolan ham yonimdan o'tma. Dunyo ayriladi axir hushidan, oh ular-ku ular, o'zim ham hatto qo'rqaman olovning o'ymonishidan.
अग्नि वृक्ष हरियाली की सहरन पहुंचती है मेरे दिल तक। अग्नि का समुद्र मेरे सीने में कांपता है। मैं खिल चुकी हूं पूरी तरह, पर किस तरह की वृक्ष या इंसान हूं मैं, यह एक याचना है। सपनों में भी कहां है चैन, जैसे जैसे दुनिया सनकी हो रही है पागल। लोग तो लोग हैं, मैं भी मैं ही हूं। आशंकित एक दिन अग्नि जाग जाएगी।
Nigohing o'tib o'ymonar olam, ismingdan gurkirab yashaydi dunyo. Sen mening samoga cho'zgan qo'limsan, umidim tongida porlagan ziyo. Sening ko'ngling osmon, sening ruhing nur, orzum yulduzlarini qo'yarsan yoqib, men esa yuksalib boraman mag'rur, osmonlarday o'tgan umringga boqib.
With kiss from your face, the world wakes up. With saying your name, the earth too blooms. You are like my hand rising in the sky, and the light shining in the dawn of hopes. Your heart is sky, your soul is light. If only you switched your stars on. Look, I'm flying in the sky with pride, looking at your life as it goes on.
Yuragimdan yurib kirasiz, yuragimga yurib kirasiz, yuragimdan ketasiz chiqib. Nafasim yetmaydi qoling dimoqqa, ruhim devorini o'tasiz yiqib. Bor yo'g'i yurakman maqtar bir ishqqa, barcha gunohingiz keladi kechkim, sochilib ketaman sizsiz bo'shliqqa, meni terib olmaydi hech kim.
एक बार मेरे हृदय में प्रवेश करने के बाद तुम जितनी जल्दी हो सके बाहर चले जाते हो। तुमसे ठहरने का आग्रह करना बहुत मुश्किल है, और इतने कम समय में तो असंभव। मैं केवल एक हृदय हूं, तुम्हारे प्रेम की इच्छुक। तुम्हारे सब गुनाह मैं माफ कर देना चाहती हूँ। तुम्हारे बिना मैं बिखर जाऊंगी, और कोई देना नहीं चाहता मुझे अपना हाथ।
Isming yuragimga urilgan xanjar, isming yuragimga urilgan xanjar, sug'urib olsalar o'laman. Men seni shu qadar muhabbat va azob bilan jim sevaman. Sevaman, o'limni sevganday, har lahza ruhimni pichoqlab, men mangu yashayman, go'rda ham, dilimda ismingni quchoqlab.
Your name is sword, puncturing to the heart. If it is pulled out, in fact, I will die. I love you with affection like this, no doubt, even though the suffering and struggle are high. Love you as if loving the beauty of death. Love you with stabbing my soul every time. I will live forever, even in the grave, with holding and embracing in the heart your name.
Umrimni o'tkinchi saboga berdim. Umrimni o'tkinchi saboga berdim. Eng so'nggi chaqamni gadoga berdim. Bu telba ruhimni Xudoga berdim. Sabo yig'ib bordi, gadoga berdi. Gado yig'ib bordi, Xudoga berdi. Xudo meni senga xatoga berdi. Sen meni kimlarga berding, azizam?
बहती हुई हवा को सौंप दिया था मैंने अपना जीवन, दे दिया था अपना आखिरी सिक्का भिखारी को, अपनी पागल आत्मा ईश्वर को समर्पित कर दी थी। हवा आगे बह गई और उसने वह भिखारी को दे दिया। भिखारी ने सब इकट्ठा कर ईश्वर को सौंप दिया और ईश्वर ने दिया है मुझे, तुमको, मुझे गलती समझकर तुमने मुझे किसे दे दिया प्रिय?
Mayli ketgan noshon gullar oy nurida yig'lagan kabi, nigohingdan bitta nur tilab pichirlaydi ilinjilladi. Qaramaysan izingni yuvar ko'zlarimdan oqqan sog'inch may. Mayli ketgin shu vido haqqa, qalbingni ber so'nggi bor o'pay. Sen baribir yaxshisan, o'tgan kunlar uchun 100 bora qulluq. Faqat bas qil dema, ishq umr bu ertakning nihoyasi yo'q. Qara, tunning behush bag'rida dilpora oy mastona qalqir, azoblarning kechib nahridan topsharmiz biz yana balki. Xayr dema ko'zlarimda qol, qara diydam to'la sog'inch may. Umrimni ol, azobimni ol, qalbingni ber bir marta o'pay.
All right, you may go off, as if wild orchids cry bitter tears in the moonlit night. Lip of hope will convene in whispers. Begging in your stare beam of light, you ignore, and pans of love that shed from my eyes begin to wash your track. All right, you go. But give your heart to me last time to kiss, for this leave-taking sake. You are worthwhile, I say, in any case. Thanks a lot for those previous days. But never ask to stop. In fact, love life. No end to this long story, and no ways. Look, the sad moon trembles tipsily in the bosom of a senseless night. Having forded the river of tortures, probably we shall find each other. Say no goodbye, but just in my eyes stay. Look, in full of desperation I miss. Take my life, and wholly take my pain. Give your soul only once to kiss.
Yo'q, endi ko'nglingdan chiqarolmaysan. Umringda quyoshday porlayveraman. Men yillar qa'riga ketganingda ham men seni samoday chorlayveraman. Ismingni tomlarga yozaman maqtal, g'unchalar bargida uxlayveraman. Ayt, yo'q, mensiz umring bo'lolmas tugal. Men seni har lahza yo'qlayveraman. Otashman, dengizman, samoman, nurman, jismu jahoningni o'rayveraman. Ayt, qanday topasan qochmoqqa imkon? Men seni Xudodan so'rayveraman. Men so'nggi tomchiman, yagona najot. Faqat sen ichgin deb qistayveraman. Qo'llarimda qoldi eng so'nggi hayot. Qo'llarimda qoldi eng so'nggi hayot. O'lsam ham ishqingni istayveraman. Rahmat.
No, you never take me out of heart. In your life, I, as the sun, will shine. Though you go 2,000,000 years back, but as the sky I call to sight of mine. To mornings, I with pleasure write your name, and to proceed on leaves of buds to sleep. No, your luck without me is lame. Every moment missing you, I weep. I am fire, sea, the sky, and rain. I go on to wrap up all your world. Tell me, have you chanced to run away? I'll always ask you from the lot. I am the last raindrop, the only aid, but I hasten you to drink it dry. The latest living was left on my hand. I want your love, even if when I die.
Those translations really. Thank you very much. Next, Noman Saab from India. Noman Saab was born in 1965 in Ara, Bihar. So he is a Bihari compatriot. He completed his graduation in English and with 2 masters in English and Urdu. He has published 5 collections of poetry, 5 collections of poetry. अजनबी 17 के दरमियान, 7 के दरमियान, and other anthologies. He has also translated many poems and short stories from Urdu and Hindi for Hindi and Urdu journals. Noman Saab.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to listen to some of the best Asian poets of our times. Thank you so much, my page. My first poem is डूबती नाव पर। नजरियात की सीढ़ियों के नीचे खुदाई जारी है। नजरियात की सीढ़ियों के नीचे खुदाई जारी है। पूरी ताकत से पकड़े रहिए अपने अपने मुल्क, मजहब और अकीदे के सांपों की तुम जैसे पकड़े रहते हैं डूबती नाव पर सवार लोग एक दूसरे को।
On a sinking boat, translated by Noman Chokji. Excavation going on in full swing under the stairs of ideologies. Hold tight, each one of you, snake tails of your own country, religion, convictions, the way people hold each other on a sinking boat.
Another poem is तमहीद एक मोहब्बतनामे की। कमरे की सीलन से उताकर कहीं चली गई है मेरे हिस्से की धूप। बंधन से डरने वाली चिड़िया उड़ रही है खोखले आकाश में और मैं तो इस्तकबाल भी नहीं कर सकता किसी नई आहट का, क्योंकि डर गया हूं मैं आते हुए कदमों की लौटती हुई बाज़गश्त से। मेरी आंखों में जम गई है उदास लू भरी दोपहर, हिमालय की चोटी पर जमने वाली बर्फ की तरह। मैं भूल चुका हूं अमलतास के फूल से अपना पहला मुकालमा। कमरे के किस दरवाजे से, खिड़की से या रोज़न से दाखिल हुई थी सूरज की पहली किरण, मुझे कुछ याद नहीं। एक बेहद मसरूफ लम्हे के लिए संभाल रखा था मैंने बहुत सारा खाली वक्त अपनी आंखों में, अपने होठों पर, अपनी बाहों के टूटते हुए घेरे में, बेहंगम ख्वाबों के बिखरते दायरे में। किसी बसंती जिस्म के पहले त्योहार में अधूरा छोड़ आया मैं अपना रक्स। मेरे इश्क से कहीं ज्यादा लंबी थी मेरे प्रेम पत्र की भूमिका।
Backdrop of a love letter, translated into English by Vijendra Sajwan. Fed up of room dampness, my share of sunshine has vanished. Afraid of bondage, the sparrow flies in the hollow firmament. And I can't even welcome any new whisper within, for I've got frightened of the echo returning from the approaching steps. Gloomy scorching windy afternoons have deposited in my eyes like the snow accumulating on the Himalayan peaks. I have forgotten my maiden word with the laburnum flower. Which door of the room, window, or which peephole first rays of the sun had entered, I remember not. For a moment most busy, I had preserved a veil of a time inside my eyes, on my lips, on the collapsing covers of arms, amidst the realms of shattering dreams. In the maiden carnival of a springtime figurine, midway I left my dance. Much lengthier was the backdrop of my love letter than my love.
Next poem is सरहद. दो लाशें अगर दफन कर दी जाएं एक ही कब्र में, तो भी आगोश में नहीं भरती एक दूसरे को. दो लाशें अगर दफन कर दी जाएं एक ही कब्र में, तो भी आगोश में नहीं भरती एक दूसरे को. दो जिंदा लोग अगर चाहें तो मिल सकते हैं दुनिया की किसी भी सरहद पर बनी ऊंची से ऊंची दीवार गिराकर. लेकिन याद रहे, दो कब्रों के बीच की दीवार कभी नहीं गिरती मूसलाधार बारिश में भी.
This poem and all subsequent poems that we read out have been translated by Akanksha Singh. Border. Even if two dead bodies are buried in one grave, they do not embrace each other. If two alive people want, they can meet after demolishing the tallest walls of any border of the world. But remember, the wall separating two graves can never fall, not even in a torrent of rain.
Next one. नदी पार करते हुए. मैं नहीं देख पाता अपनी जानिब बढ़ती लहरों को, डर कर भागती मछलियों को, किनारे से कटती हुई मिट्टी को. मैं नहीं देख पाता अपनी जानिब बढ़ती लहरों को, डर कर भागती मछलियों को, किनारे से कटती हुई मिट्टी को. कैसे जान पाता नदी का दुख, अगर गुजर जाता मैं भी पुल से दूसरों की तरह.
While crossing, seen the waves approaching me, the frightened fishes scattering away, the soil cutting off from the shore. How would I have known the river's sorrow if I had just used the bridge to cross the river like everyone else?
Next one is सड़क के दोनों तरफ खैरियत है. आसमान के एक किनारे से दूसरे किनारे तक उड़ रही है रंग बिरंगी मौत, पतंगों की तरह बल खाती हुई, जिसकी डोर गली के मनचले लड़कों के हाथों में है. बिखरते चांद की अर्जली परछाई पर, बिखरते चांद की अर्जली परछाई से बने रथ पर सवार झूमते हुए आते हैं आवारा कुत्ते, जो भौंकते हैं कभी धीमी और कभी तेज आवाज में. समझदार लोग खड़े हो जाते हैं सड़क के दोनों तरफ सर झुकाकर.
Everything's fine on both ends of the road. From one corner of the sky to the other, colorful death is flying, gliding like a kite whose string is in the hands of playful neighborhood boys. Riding the chariot formed from the half-lit shadow of the shreds of moonlight, jumping stray dogs arrive, who bark intermittently in soft and loud voices. Wise people stand on both sides of the road with bowed heads.
Next one is Ground Zero. वहां भी होता है एक रेगिस्तान जहां किसी को दिखाई नहीं देती उड़ती हुई रेत। वहां भी होता है एक दर्द जहां तलाश नहीं किए जा सकते चोट के निशान। वहां भी होती है एक रात जहां जुर्म होता है चांद की तरफ देखना भी। वहां भी होती है एक रोशनी जहां पाबंदी होती है पतंगों की खुदसोजी पर। वहां भी होती है एक दहशत जहां अदब के साथ कातिलों से इजाजत मांगनी होती है चीखने के लिए। वहां भी होता है एक सोग जहां मोमबत्तियां तक नहीं होती मरने वालों की याद में जलने या जलाने के लिए। वहां भी होता है एक शून्य जहां नहीं पहुंच पाते टीवी के कैमरे।
Ground zero. There too is a desert where no one can see the flying sand. There too is a sorrow where no one can find scars or wounds. There too is a night where it is a crime to even look at the moon. There too is a light where moths aren't allowed to die in the flame. There too is a terror where one has to bow and ask the murderer's permission before shouting. There too is mourning where there are no candles that can burn or that one can burn to remember the dead. There too is an abyss where TV cameras can never reach.
Can you let me know if the time is exceeding?
We have time for one more point.
मुझे हैरानी है नेक्स्ट वन। अगर सेहतमंद होने का मतलब माहौल का सारा ऑक्सीजन अपने फेफड़े में भरकर लाफानी हो जाना है तो मुझे नहीं चाहिए ये जिंदगी। अगर अपने खेत सींचने का मतलब औरों को मजबूर करना है किसी बंजर रेगिस्तान में रेत भागने के लिए तो मैं तरजीह दूंगा भूखा मर जाने को। अगर अमन पसंद होने का मतलब दूसरों को दहशत ज़दा करके खुद चैन की नींद सोना है तो मुझे नफरत है ऐसे अमन से। अगर हुब्बुल वतनी एक सरहद में उगे पेड़ की दूसरी तरफ पड़ने वाली छांव से नफरत करने का नाम है तो मुझे हैरानी है कि खला में चक्कर काटते हुए बेशुमार सैयारों और सितारों से टकराकर फना क्यों नहीं हो गई ये जमीन अब तक।
I'm surprised. If being healthy means taking in all the oxygen from the environment and filling it in our lungs to become immortal, then I do not want this life. If irrigating your fields means forcing others to eat dirt in the unfertile desert, then I would prefer to die starving. If being peace-loving means terrorizing others so that you can sleep in peace, then I despise such peace. If nationalism means hating the shadow cast by a row of trees on the other side, then I am surprised. I am surprised, while revolving in the universe, why has the Earth not been destroyed by colliding with one of the many stars or planets yet?
Thanks, Swaraj. Thank you, sir.
बहुत शुक्रिया अनुमान साहब। All we can say is that we understand you. And now, finally, Asad Zariza, Hindi poet, critic, and translator. His first collection of poems, Pehne or Anya Kavitaएं, was published in 1980, and it established him as a distinctive voice in contemporary Hindi poetry. He has published 2 more collections since, so you can see that he's very reluctant to be seen. Asad sir.
शुक्रिया अपूर्वा ने साथी कवियों Raza Foundation, Ashok Bajpayee. While remembering the Raza Sahab, whose influence will continue to unfold for a long time, I must also remember his old comrade, the famous Maqbul Fida Hussain, who died and buried in a foreign land, persecuted and harassed in his own country, in the face of our collective national cowardice. I must dedicate the poems I am going to read today to the memory of Hussain Sahab. 18 महीने, ये 2015 के अक्टूबर या नवंबर महीनों में लिखी थी। इसका अनुवाद सूर्य कौर ने किया है। 18 महीने ही बीते हैं, पहाड़ों में पतझड़ समेटने लगा है अपने रंग। जल्द ही ये बंद हो जाएंगे पुराने संदूक में जो लकड़ी, पत्थर और मिट्टी के बने घर में रखा है। मैदान में गरीब गुरबा महसूस कर रहे हैं आने वाले जाड़े की कंप, उससे पहले की सेहन। अब के ताज़ा सब्जियों की क्या अजब बहार है शहरों में, वो दिखती हैं जैसे किसी दूसरे ग्रह से लाकर रखी चीजों से। एक नौ उम्र वधू की तरह मुल्क चल पड़ा है एक अनजान मंजिल की तरफ, जहाँ कोई अजनबी उसके इंतजार में है। ये सचमुच एक बारात है, गिरते अंधेरे में फासिस्ट बैंड मुस्तैदी से बजाते चल रहे हैं पुरानी धुनें, पर बोल नए हैं। अहमदाबाद में नदी का नाम अब भी साबरमती है, वो के पानी उसमें नर्मदा का है। टर्मिनल 3 पर डॉक्टरी पढ़ने बाहर जाते भांजे से कहते हैं, मानो बेटे अपनी खुराक का ध्यान रखना, और मेरी मानो तो वापस ना आना। ये बात गांठ बांध लो कि अपने देश में बेआसरा होने से बेहतर है परदेश में शरणार्थी हो जाना। बस चले तो छोटे भैया को भी अपने पास बुला लेना। संसद में अभी भी आमने सामने हैं एक दूसरे को घूरते हुए पुराने राष्ट्रपिता और नए राष्ट्रपिता। तस्वीरों की इस जंग अजीम के ये आखिरी दिन है। जल्द ही आप उन्हें मुस्कुराकर देखेंगे।
18 months. This was written in 2015, in the months of October and November. It's been translated into English by Mr. Savir Kaur. 18 months. It's been just 18 months. In the mountains, autumn has begun gathering its colors. Soon they will be put away in the old trunk that is kept in the home made of wood, stones, and earth. In the fields, the poor shiver in anticipation of the winter's cold. At this time, fresh vegetables seem to grow in the city. They look like objects brought from another planet. Like a teenage bride, the nation has embarked towards an unknown house where a stranger awaits. This is truly the bridegroom's party. In the gathering dark, a fascist band marches on, playing old tunes. The words are new. The river in Ahmedabad is still called Sabarmati, but its waters are from the Narmada. At Terminal 3, a nephew who goes abroad to study medicine is told by his uncle, "Son, make sure you eat well, and if you heed my words, don't return. Take my words to heart. Better to live a refugee in a strange land than without hope at home. If you are able, call your younger brother to you too. In Parliament, till now, the old and the new fathers of the nation stare hard at each other. This redoubtable portrait war approaches its last days. Soon you will see them smile.
This was done in 2017, the famous year. अगले 2.5 साल अगले 2.5 साल में कुछ तय नहीं होने जा रहा है, भविष्य आ चुका है। जब उसने कंधे पर हाथ रखा, तुम कहीं और देख रहे थे। जब उसका टीका तुम्हारे माथे पर लगा, तुम हंस रहे थे। वो कौन था जो खोया खोया सा टीवी देखता था, पराजित और बदहवास सा बैंक की तरफ भागता था। परसों ही तो वो कह रहा था, सिस्टम रिबूट हो रहा है, थोड़ा इंतजार करो। नक्षत्रों का जीवन, काल की अवधारणा, अंतरिक्ष की दूरियां, तुम्हारे घर से एटीएम का फासला, तुम्हारे बचपन से आती हुई कोई रोशनी, सब गड़बड़ है। एक अजीब सी सीटी बजती है कानों में। देखने के तरीके, जानने की बातें, सीखने की इच्छा, सब पर कोई एक्सपायरी डेट छाप दी गई लगती है। उलट पुलट कर देखते हो, इबारत साफ पढ़ी भी नहीं जाती। उस खोई हुई औरत को भी आज ही दिखना था, इंतजार करती हुई भीड़ के बीच। कैशियर पुकारता है, सुमन लता। बड़ी चपलता से उठती है, बोलती है, हाँ जी। टोकन देकर पैसे लेकर लौटते हुए वो अचानक तुम्हारे सामने रुकती है। हेलो, आप मुझे पहचान नहीं रहे? मैं आपके पड़ोसी में तो आ गई हूँ। जी कह के तुम अजीब ढंग से मुस्कुराते हो। तुम्हें अब पता नहीं वो कौन है और तुम कहाँ खड़े हो, अतीत में, अनिश्चित भविष्य में या अटपटे वर्तमान में। भविष्य आ चुका है। अभी अभी तक बहुत कुछ तुम्हारे अनुकूल था। कमल तुम्हारे लिए एक फूल था और केसर महज एक रंग। चीखता हुआ आदमी एक अशालीन उपस्थिति। एक फीकी हंसी रह गई है जो और फीकी होती जाती है। कड़वापन, व्यंग, कटाक्ष, निंदा सब हुक्मरानों के अहाते में है। तुम्हारे पास है क्या? न नुक्कड़, न नाटक। प्रहसन पर भी अब उन्हीं का एकाधिकार है।
Next 2.5 years, translated by Asad Zaviji. What of the next 2.5 years? The future is already here. It tapped you lightly on your shoulder, but you were looking elsewhere. When it put a mark of identity on your forehead, you laughed. Who is it then who sits blankly looking at the TV screen, defeated and desperate, rushes towards the bank? Who said only the other day, it is just the system rebooting, we must wait? The life of planets, notions of time, distances in space, the distance of your house from the nearest ATM, a strange light emanating from your largely forgotten childhood, all are mixed up. A strange tune is whistling in your ears. Ways of seeing, things worth knowing, desire to learn, all appear stamped with an expiry date. You turn them over, but the markings are not very legible. And then, that long-lost woman surfaces today. In the middle of the waiting crowd in the bank, the cashier calls, Suman Lata? She promptly gets up. Yes, sir. Surrenders her brass token, collects her money, and halts in front of you. Hello, don't you recognize me? I live on the same block as you. Of course, you respond with a faintly strange smile. You are not sure who she is, nor where you stand. In the past, at some uncertain moment in the future, or in the odd present. The future is here. Till a while ago, everything was going for you as you liked it. The lotus was just a flower, saffron just a color, and a shouting man an undignified presence. You laugh an unconvincing laughter that keeps getting fainter. Bitterness, satire, taunts, denunciation are all on the side of those who now rule over you. What do you have? Neither the street corner nor the act. They even have monopoly over the daily farce.
राग भूप ज्यादा हो जाए रोक दीजिए।
नहीं, आप प्लीज, मैं इशारा करूंगा।
राग भूप दिन ऐसा कि राग भूप से बढ़कर खींचा चला जाता है। आवृत्तियों से भरा हृदय गति को धीमा करता, दुख भी एक ओढ़ब तान लेता है। एक सहनशील गांधार अपने समय की कड़वाहट को सूख लेता है। सहिष्णुता के बहुत से गुण बताए जाते हैं। सावरकर को सहानुभूति से पढ़ा जाना चाहिए, कहा था मुझसे लोहियावादी उस पत्रकार ने सन 1986 में। सन 2015 में दिखाई दिया तो उसने फिर वही सलाह दी, सावरकर को सहानुभूति से पढ़िए, और आशीष गांधी को भी। सुनकर मेरे मन ने दोहराया, गा रे सा, सा धा सा रे गा, पा गा धा पा गा रे सा।
Rag Bhoop, translated by Asatid. The day happily drags itself behind Rag Bhoop, full of recurrent phrases, slowing down the heartbeat. Grief takes a pentatonic taan. A tolerant Gandhar absorbs the bitterness of the present hour. Virtues of tolerance, it is said, are many. Savarkar should be read with sympathy. I was told this by a Lohiite journalist in the year 1986. In the year 2015, he again had the same advice. Read Savarkar sympathetically, and Ashish Nandi too. In my mind, I hear again, Ga, Re, Sa Dha, Sa Re Ga, Pa Ga, Dha Pa Ga, Re, Sa.
अनुवाद की भाषा। अनुवाद की भाषा से अच्छी क्या भाषा हो सकती है? वही है एक सफेद पर्दा जिस पर महल की तरह दिखती है हम सबकी कारगुजारियां। सारे अपराध मातृभाषाओं में किए जाते हैं, जिनमें हरदम होता रहता है मासूमियत का विमर्श। ऐसे दौर आते हैं जब अनुवाद ही में कुछ बचा रह जाता है। संवेदना को मार रही है अपनी भाषा में अत्याचार की आवाज।
The language of translation, translated by Bharat Bhushan Tiwari. What could be a better language than the language of translation? A white curtain on which all our handiwork stands apart like dirt. All crimes are perpetrated in mother tongues, which always contain a discourse on innocence. There are times when translation is the only place that has a remnant of sorts. The sound of tyranny in the native tongue is killing sympathy.
आशित करता, that's the title. ये कविता जो पहले ही से खराब थी होती जा रही है अब और खराब। कोई इंसानी कोशिश उसे सुधार नहीं सकती, मेहनत से और बिगाड़ होता है पैदा। वो संगीन से संगीनतर होती जाती एक स्थायी दुर्घटना है। सारी रचनाओं को उसके बगल से लंबा चक्कर काटकर गुजरना पड़ता है। मैं क्या करूं उस शिथिल शीशे सी भारी काया का, जिसके आगे प्रकाशित कविताएं महज तितलियां हैं और सारी समालोचना राख। मनुष्यों में वो बस मुझे पहचानती है और मैं भी मनुष्य जब तक हूँ तब तक हूँ।
The title of this poem is Unpublished Poem, translated by Rajesh Sharma. A poem already bad gets even worse. No mortal effort can improve it. Effort spoils it even more. It turns ever murkier, a permanent mishap. All writings have to take a long detour around it. How should I treat that inert, lead-like heavy body before which all poems that finally appear look like mere butterflies, and all criticism mere ash? Among the humans, it recognizes me alone, and I too am human only so long as I remain human.
इस्लामाबाद। मौसम खुशनुमा था, धूप में तेजी न थी, हवा धीरे धीरे चलती थी। पैदल चलता आदमी चलता चला जा सकता था कई मील बड़े मजे से। ये भी एक खुशफहमी थी। हालांकि मेरे साथ चलते शुक्ला जी से जब रहा न गया तो बोले, मेरे विचार से तो अब हमें इस्लामाबाद पर परमाणु बम गिरा ही देना चाहिए।
Islamabad, translated by Samartha Vashistha. It was pleasant. The sun was mild, the breeze gentle. A man on foot could have carried on for miles without trouble. All this was a misnomer though. When Shuklaji, walking beside me, could take it no more, he said, I think it's high time now we dropped a nuclear bomb on Islamabad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very apt lines, the last one especially. Thank you very much. I think the job of chair is to announce the arrival of poets, and after that there should be silence. But we have gathered here, and gathered here as members of a republic of words, poetry. And it's a very different kind of republic if we consider the fact that not only in India, but all over the world, the only emotion that now dominates the popular mind or the popular heart is nationalism. So in these nationalist times, to have very diverse voices, very diverse agonies, pains, yearnings, struggles. And these struggles are not only with fellow human beings, but with words themselves. And what it is that a poet seeks to achieve, an exact word, not a proximate word, but an exact word. And he or she knows the difficulty of gaining proximity. Because as once I have said that when you are in grave, so two dead bodies they don't embrace each other. And it's very difficult to demolish the walls. So there's difficulty, we know, but even then, the poet seeks proximity. And that we saw in all these four poets. And as I said that the poet is an embattled soul, because to fight this nationalism is getting more and more difficult. So the art of prose has now moved to poetry, I would say, because it has been corrupted by media and other practitioners of prose. And therefore, we must thank all our fellow poets. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we move to the next session.
Thank you, Abu. We are going now directly into the last session, the concluding session of WAC, the Raza Biennale of Asian Poetry. This is going to be a conversation on violence and poetry.
You're missing. Ramita, now you have the mic and the words.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here again and collaborate with the Raza Foundation. The very close friendship, civic friendship with them, I would say. I've been collaborating and as an Iranian, but also as somebody who grew up in France and also now living in India, poetry is very close to my heart. And as you know, philosophers are fond of poets, but even if they're not poets, they're always very fond of poetry. Anyway, this panel is going to be a very interesting panel, I suppose, and very important because, as you know, since Homer, poets were interested in violence, if we can consider wars also as forms of violence, of course, and interested in the sense that they wrote about violence, and it seemed like an inescapable question for them. And I think also the problem of taming violence has been a big problem for the poets and the language they use. And I will try to explain it at the end when I do my own talk. But for the time being, I would like to turn towards my friends and people who are present here. And I do not need to present them to you anymore because they have been presented and you have their list. So we're going to use the time to present them, to ask them to take the floor one by one and talk about the idea of violence and poetry. The interesting thing is that most of us here present, we lived or we have the legacy of violence in our countries. Practically all of us here present. He is from Cambodia, so he is actually the son of the killing fields of Cambodia. Afsar, he is from Afghanistan, so he is, I would say, somebody who has seen and been hurt by Taliban. And and even the Indians, I would say, he's old enough to have lived the emergency time. So a form of violence also. And of course, Bangladesh is well known for its violence. I was there a few months ago and for the second time, and I visited the house of the ex-president, as you know, who was assassinated. So a lot of violence also in Bangladesh. So we have, and I as an Iranian, of course, I've lived the Iranian Revolution, and you might have read the articles I wrote on it. So I think we have a lot to talk about. And so I will start with my Cambodian friend, Cheng Lien, and ask him to intervene and start talking about your experience of poetry and violence.
Foundation for having me here the first time to India to explore and to learn more about different kinds of voice in poetry. So talking about poetry and violence, actually I will first introduce briefly a bit about my country. We have experienced a lot of like civil wars and weapon war. So during the war, everything was shut down, especially the educated people. So no poetry, no book, no pen, no everything during the Khmer rules. After that, we just start up like from zero, like from the year zero. So the thing is that people still live in an exploration state, like hunger and hungry. So like why poetry is important? Why? Why? Because so I think that poetry work as something like therapy. And when I say therapy, we would say about the people that ill. So ill, there are two factors that can cause illness. It's the outside and the inside. So when we talk about, I will talk about only the inside sickness. So what poetry can heal it? So when people sick, we need medicine. So poetry can also be medicine, can also be a healer that can cure the desire that can make violence. So if poetry is a medicine, is a healer, so we should look at the poet. What the poet insert in the poetry to cure people that is in a violent heart, a hot heart, anger heart. So I think that poetry and poet have to interact together to heal this. If poet insert the kind of anger into his poetry, the anger will even add more into the people's mind. So violence will grow. So this is very important, and for now my people, or mostly the poet, they try to insert peace inside their piece of work, so that they hope that this can heal people's heart from anger.
Thank you, Chingy. We turn now to Shanaz Gundi from Bangladesh.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to share one of my personal experience of violent incident. In 2012, a horrendous murder took place in Dhaka, the capital city of Bangladesh. One of the journalist couple was brutally murdered in their house, and in their own house, and their 3-year-old child was found alive in that room. And police have not been able to find the murderers in the last 7 years. The women killed in that incident was my colleague, and the incident was very much shocking and terrible for me. So in this violent incident, as a person, as a poet, what shall I do? In response to that murder, I wrote a poem. And I would like to begin by reading that poem I wrote. Secret murderer. How pathetically the dead body remained laying in the bed of blood. On each sapphire moonlight night, sleep lover women are murdered in their bedrooms. Their blue, green, and pink dead bodies mingle mutually with moonlight. Somebody has planted seeds of terror in the thoroughfares. The dreadful trees are scattering panic, spreading their dark branches. The world has turned friendless, minds are engulfed with contempt. Lamentation and anguish have been prevented long ago. The crimson sun has come down the horizon. Our scimitars have pierced into our own bodies. Alas, our progeny are stepping in our flowing blood. Regrettably, soft skin suffered the ghastly rays of the sun. When you speak out, we know all, grouping into the darkness, then the secret killers inhale the same air along with our children. The poem I just read is some kind of response or the reaction to violence. What can a poet do in front of violence rather than writing a poetry? And as we know, who write poetry or poems, poetry reflects life and the world and its inner vision. So the poet responds, protests in his own word. If the poet world is violent, then the poetry becomes violent too. And in Bangladesh, we also notice that poets are often using violent images in their poetry while expressing their anger. And as one of our poets, Rafiq Azad, the poet of Bangladesh, wrote to express the anger of hungry people, "Give me rice, busters, or I shall eat up the map." So it is the reflection of his anger, reflection of hungry people, anger of hungry people. And many other such examples can be found in Bengali poem. From Rabindranath Tagore to any young contemporary poet, poetry has often explored violence. And as a Bangladeshi and Bengali person, how could I not go to the great poet Rabindranath Tagore? He wrote bitterly, said the truth about violence. Hingshaye unmotto prithibi. Earth is frenzied with fury in constant veiled conflict. Awfully crooked its path. Tangled in willy greed, all souls pray for the new birth of a savior. And also our national poet, Kazi Nazrul Islam, he also writes some violent words, violent sentences against the British rule. What I want to mention, that Kararoi Loho Kapat, Bhenge Fel Korde Lopat. In English, these iron gates of prison, destroy it and expand. This stone pedestal of chain worship, O my young lord of destruction, shake the foundation of this massive prison. Kick and break the trammels of all prisons and jails. A fire, a flame, destroy, expand. So poet has no weapon in his hand other than his words or hard words. Poet might protest with by using some violent images in poetry. As an art form, many people like to see poetry as beautiful, consolatory, uplifting, edifying, beneficial to the soul. It may indeed be all these things, but it can also show the opposite side. Ugly, distressing, dangerous, even degrading. But the treatment of violence in Bangla poetry shows us poetry cannot deny the reality of the contemporary, and it will not be labeled or safely categorized or classified in a box. Now I would like to talk about the violence against women which happened in Bangladesh and which is very common here in India too. And there are plenty of cases of domestic violence in Bangladesh. The women are persecuted outside the house, women are raped, women are killed for dowry, women are harassed in their workplace and in public places also while they are using the public transport. Such incidents happen in many countries like Bangladesh. So how can a poet and a human being or as a woman act in this situation? So as we know, the poet holds the pain of others, and one of our poets says in his poem that, this is the way how the poet expressed their expression, their impression. And I believe poetry is the language of heart, poetry is the tears of a poet, and poetry is the very personal feelings of his or her own. Bangladesh is a small country with large population, 170 million, and we have poverty and the large gap between poor and rich people, which is increases day by day. We have lack of good governance and quality employment, which is affected income situation, income distribution. And today we have practices democracy, but sometimes we found that democracy is not really democracy. It is under democracy we say kind of democratic dictatorship sits in the country in some matters. So we have very little space for freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Apparently we have freedom of speech. We can speak anything when we praise the government, but if we go against the government, then it was not allowed. So there is a self-censorship in Bangladesh rises. And as we know, typically the violence is born from exploitation, deprivation, and injustice. Unfortunately, contemporary Bangladesh has all of it, so naturally it reflects on our poem. And now I want to say, I'm talking about another kind of violence, which is come from the hatred. And hatred do not allow any diversity or any indifference. So I want to recall the worst terrorist attack in Bangladesh, which is happened in the year 2016, and 22 civilians, including 17 foreigners, were killed by terrorists who hosted a restaurant. And this type of terrible attack happening every day around the world. So it is overwhelming that there could be such hatred and senseless killing. And we have seen it in India also. I want to mention the Kashmir incident, which happened when we came here on the 14th February. So, what we see, the world is full of violence incidents, and poets always feel hurt when they see this kind of violence, and they try to protest against violence, they try to bring peace, they talk for peace, and but I don't know if what change has come to be. But I want to conclude my saying to quote Oscar Wilde, who said that art always anticipates life. It does not copy, but molds it to its purpose. And the poet of Bangladesh also do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Shahnaz. I'm very happy that you brought up the violence against women, because in this biennale we had many women poets, female poets from everywhere, from Armenia yourself, Iran, many other countries, Bhutan, and I'm not naming everyone. And this is one of the issues that we could have had a panel only with women, with no men, actually only men, maybe next time. Anyway, thank you, and I will turn now to our Indian poet, Asad Reddy. Maybe he has something to say about violence in India.
Thank you. You made a very interesting remark that I'm old enough. You have lived through Indian emergency. The truth is that I'm rather nostalgic about it today, because I'm unlucky enough to be living in Modi times in India, current times, which are far worse than what people saw during the emergency of 1975 and 6. So I was saying that I'm rather nostalgic about Indian emergency. We are living in worse time today. And I'm sure unless the people who we call in political jargon the bhakts, everybody else would agree with that. Violence and poetry, I mean, what to say? There is so much to say about it. The poems I read, I'm sure, were about that violence.
Take your time.
But I would quote the great Rumi, and forgive me, my pronunciation is the early modern Persian as pronounced in India, which is har ke u bedar kar pur dard kar, har ke u agah kar rukhe zard kar. that the one who is aware, who is more woken up, feels the pain more. His pain is greater. And the one who is more alert, his face is bound to be pale. Poetry has to look pale-faced today. It has to feel that pain. I'm not saying that that is a political or historical mandate. I think that is poetry's existential condition. That's how I think about it. I remember my grandma, when I was a child, she was preaching, my older sister. She said, "You, Allah Miya ne aankhein di hai, to palke bhi di. That God has given you eyes, but God also has given you eyelids. So don't all the time, keeping the eyes open all the time could be very painful. Sometimes you should also close them. And you will live in peace if you use your eyelids more than your eyes." Now poetry has this freedom. To keep its eyes open, it also has the freedom to close its eyes. The tragedy today is that the second freedom is almost becoming impossible. Closing your eyes is no more a choice and no more a possibility. I mean, the poets who generally retire, go into internal exile within themselves, also cannot really keep their eyes closed. We are living in such times. This is the kind of a dilemma that faces poetry today. That's one part of the thing. Now it is true that the country I represent is too large a country. Subcontinent is so big to be defined merely by its present moment. But this present moment is not just a passing phase, I'm afraid. We might see the worst times. That is the danger. So the poetry, which is already an arena of danger, was sensitive to the danger and the signals. It's almost impossible. It chokes, your expression. Generally, it is said that the bad times are good times for poetry. When a country is going through bad times, when a society is passing through bad times, it's good for poetry. Poetry is able to raise its voice. It feeds on it. I wonder whether that is true. Sometimes it chokes one's voice. Now look at our intelligentsia. The response that is coming from society is not really a desirable one. Let me look at my notes, what I was going to say. That there is no mistaking the fact that in my country today, it is being ruled by proto-Nazi formations. They occupy the highest offices, are in command of the powerful organs of parliamentary democracy, most legislatures, and they have increasingly started controlling the streets. They have the command of the repressive structures of the state, the police, the security forces, etc., law and order machinery. They also have successfully outsourced violence, individual violence, to the vigilante groups and their paramilitaries, their brown shirts, who go about their task with great impunity. More than this, they are rewriting history, redefining culture and heritage through brute force, not through discussion and debate, but through brute force and intimidation. In their textbooks, they are even changing the outcomes of past battles. So that's the state of affairs in India today. This has immediate and medium-term consequences in the field of cultural creation. I mean, I won't take too long, but I must say these are the challenges. I don't think any poet can really turn one's back to it.
Thank you very much. Thank Thank you very much, Asad Zaidi. That was very interesting and thoughtful. Actually, I think we're going to come back and discuss what the issues that you talked about. So let's turn to Afghanistan and my friend Mohammed Asad Rafi.
درود بر شما. سلام علیکم. Namaste and good afternoon. Let's we need to say we should have two phrases or two means for this discussion. One is violence and poetry, and the second will be violence and poetry. I mean, we have other words also that we have the violence means or the violence effects also, like epic poetry, like protest poetry or political poetry. I think when we say about violence in poetry, this is very important that some of our poets in Afghanistan and other countries will be face to face with the bad news and bad event. They will have reject of violence in their poems. So if we look to the past, one of very famous book of Ferdowsi, the great poems of Persian, that is a work of art, it's Shahnameh. In Shahnameh we have a lot of poems about violence, reject about violence and talking to violence. So I think when we have the political poems, we must have some words that they belong to violence. Also, the Persian poetry is mixed with love poetry, with love words. As you know, Maulana Jalaluddin Muhammad Balkhi Rumi has said, ملت عاشق ملت ها جداست عاشقی اسرار excuse me عاشقی its meaning is that the love is the main word of the main word of the world, yeah. So we have also some other words that we must use the violence words in our poetry, like the resistance poetry. You know about the resistance poetry of Palestine and resistance poetry in Afghanistan, or Afghanistan resistance poetry. When in Afghanistan we have suicide attack day by day, and we have fighting about 40 years. So how we should don't have violence in our poetry. In the past also, some of our very great poems have had their own opinion about violence and love in their poetry. As I said, Maulana Jalaluddin Muhammad Balkhi Rumi, that he was a very famous prophet of love. He has said, باز آمدم چون عید نو تا قفل زندان بشکنم این چرخ مردم خوار را چنگال و دندان بشکنم. It means I return again to break the present law and broke form and teeth of this monitor circle. You know, here is violence, I think, reject of violence in this poetry. Also, we should see to Hafiz. بیا تا گل برافشانیم و می در ساغر اندازیم، فلک را سقف بشکافیم و طرح نو در اندازیم یا براندازیم. Come to stream, flower, the pour wine into the wine glass. Come to cliff, roof of the sky, and uproot its base. You know, in these poems that I think this is the reject of violence in poetry. But in my mean, poem is the love alphabet, and poem use the love alphabet just. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I suggest that I do my commentary and then we can take questions from the floor eventually if you want to intervene also and have a kind of a debate with us on stage. That would be very nice. Anyway, I want to get back to what has been said here and also try to summarize. It's interesting that practically, starting from my friend from Cambodia, his point of view was that poetry can be a therapy, it can be a medicine to violence. So there's a way out through poetry to put an end to violence. For Shahnaz from Bangladesh, she was a little bit more pessimistic actually, because she said that if the poets live in a violent world, their poetry is going to be also violent, because this element of hatred is there. And Asad Zaidi from India, actually, he talked about poets' existential condition, which goes against violence, I mean existentially. It's not just politically or ideologically, it's actually a poet is existentially anti-violent, goes against the current of violence. And finally, Muhammad Afsar Rahmi from Afghanistan, he was referring to the poems of Hafiz and Rumi, but he said that the poet talks to violence, which I think is very interesting, how a poet can talk to violence. Anyway, when I get back to all this has been said by people here, the panelists, we see that they're talking all about the different feelings of the poets. You know, the feeling of hatred, feeling of rejection, but talking to violence. And that reminds me of what Wordsworth, you know, the poet says, who used to say when he said that poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful things. And then if that's the case, no space of human experience can generate a wider, I would say, range of powerful feelings than violence. Violence, what does it generate? Violence generates fear, violence generates hatred, which was mentioned. Violence generates humiliation. Actually, I think our Palestinian poet here present, he talked about humiliation. It generates disgust. It generates, but it also generates passion and exhilaration, especially for people who practice violence against other human beings. They really take their kicks out of it sometimes, you know, like the Nazi stormtroopers, or you have these people in different countries that when they use violence, they're exhilarated. I mean, masses when they use violence against others. they also look very exhilarated. So the point is that we usually, and that was present in some of the poems that were read in the past few days here, we usually relate poetry to romance and love. And it is true that most love poems are in favor of love. But poetry is not only about human beings falling in love with another human being, but it's also, I believe, it's a response to a man's inhumanity to man. And it's, so poets are here also to somehow testify, be witness to this inhumanity, not just for the friendship that we have for to each other, but also the inhumanity which human beings have been practicing against each other. So this is where the problem becomes, the problem of violence becomes so central to poetry writing. But the question I'm asking after what has been said with the panel, can we write poems on violence, or can we write violent poems? Because I think this is we have to distinguish. Poets only write poems on violence, or do they write violent poems? Now, this reminds me of what the German philosopher Theodor Adorno said very famously, as you know, after he left Germany because of Nazism, and when he came back, his famous quote, which is quoted by many of us philosophers, is that to write poetry after Auschwitz is barbaric. Everybody knows that quote, very famous quote of Adorno. But what did he really mean by that? Because this is a very important thing to say, that after the Holocaust we cannot write poetry anymore. How can writing poetry after a horrific experience like the Holocaust be barbaric? And actually I think Adorno meant that what he meant was that in a society where we cannot find a moral space, when a poet cannot find a moral space outside the reality and the language it wishes to criticize, writing poems become barbaric. So there is certainly, when you write poetry, I think you create an ethical space for you. Can be an ethical space against the reality in which you're living, can be an ethical space against the ordinary language, which can be also barbaric. So Adorno uses a metaphor which that points to the absence of this moral and critical space, and he calls it, I quote him, open air prison. Open air prison. An open air prison is a society where everything is totalized, everything is homogenized, where you don't have a space to breathe, you don't have a space to think, you don't have a space, it's an Orwellian, actually, we can say, space. And this, the Orwellian sense of the term here is where language, going back to language because it's so important to all of us, me as a philosopher, you as a poet, language becomes a device in the service of a dictatorship or a totalitarian domination. So we dominate people through, and I think 1984 of George Orwell shows that brilliantly as a piece of literature, but we have it also in many other, literary works. So, but what is important? How can we go beyond that? And that's more the point I want to make. I think that poetry is a way of listening to language, because it's an art of respecting language when it hears language, you know. But poets have to hear language, they have to listen to language, and not just speak it, but also listen to language. And it's not, of course, it's not because the poets love words that they are prisoners of words. Many of you Armenian poets sitting over there, she said that we have to also know how to go beyond the words and create new words. Poets are not servants of words, actually. But that means that if they are not servants of words, they can be friends of something bigger. Now, philosophically, at this time, I've become very Heideggerian, because Heidegger says poets should be friends of being. And it means that they have to listen to the voice of being, as he says, which is very, very important. But when a poet listens to the voice of being through the art of connecting with the language, they are actually, as German poet Hölderlin said, they are dwelling poetically on earth. They are dwelling poetically on earth. There's a difference between just living and dwelling. And here, dwelling poetically, I think, is an attempt to secure man's place, or human being's place on earth against violence. Because we are practicing today violence against earth. So, to make it short and come back to you, I think that poetry takes leave from the wasteland of the devastated earth, if I can say that. And because poetry is, and we saw it when you were reading your poems, poetry sings, I think, the vanity of the world without being vain itself. Thank you. Okay, so maybe, do you have any points that I turn towards our panelists? Do you add what I said or you said, each one of you? No? But we can take questions. Yes. You need a mic. We can tell this. Our poet from Vietnam.
Vietnam in exile.
In exile. I'm in exile too, don't worry. But most important is have the exilic mind.
Yeah. You know that I come from a country destroyed, devastated by many long, barbarous, inhuman, unjust war in history. And I myself have experienced prison in two regimes, French colonialism and Vietnamese socialist regime. So, but you remember during the war, my poem always expressed the love, the desire to go to the other side, consider everybody as a brother and sister. I must underline, sister. They are women, not only men. So the Vietnamese divide into two parts, North and South, like Korea, East and West Germany. That incident of history. But we try to reconcile between us. First, because we are human beings. Secondly, we are one people to speak one language, Vietnamese language. Yeah. And the Vietnamese people is known as one people who love poetry. And almost every Vietnamese think that he have already been a poet, but not exactly. About the poetry, if we say poetry and we refer to the poet, we must eliminate the words violence. If a poet writes inducing violence in his poem, I think that he lost the value of poet. The poet must be a peaceful, a conciliant, a tolerant human being, a brother and sister of all the human beings, not an enemy. Not an he run and hide. No, come, I am a poet. Have confidence on me. Naturally, you see. So, poetry risks to be used as a means to reinforce authoritarian regime. We must not forget in authoritarian regime, poetry, literature serve the politics of the power. So, poet, we must remain independent, remain our nature, our role, our function, our vision is a poet, not a poet serving a government or authority or regime. In my poem, to oppose the violence, I use children, love, wife, nature, tolerance, freedom, brother and sister. These words are numerous in my poem, many hundred poems. You find tolerance, brother, sister, lover, children. I even write a poem. When the poem mistreats a child, the children, that humanity began to commit atrocity, commit crime.
Hey, make it short, please.
Yeah. So I just say, in my experience, many poets in an authoritarian regime have been used as an instrument for propaganda, and they lost their beautiful function, mission, as a poet among us, not a poet for such and such political regime.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think that we can go back to what 2 days ago Sudhir was talking about, of differentiating between the poet and the poetry. Because poets, like other human beings, they die, and if they are good poets, their poetry is going to remain, but future generations are going to forget about who the poet was. Actually, I think Ezra Pound is a good example of it. A fascist poet, but we read his poetry, but practically very few people might know that he was a fascist. Yes, Ashok, you want to say something? No. Yes. Make it short, huh, please.
While I admire courage and the creativity of Ashok Jaggi, as another Indian poet, I would like to make 2 observations. Number one, yes, we put up struggle against all sorts of control and distortion of our freedom to think and feel and speak. I would not agree with you, Asasra, that I could look at emergency through nostalgia. Kumashankar Joshi, great Gujarati poet, was in Mumbai during emergency, and Jayaprakash Narayan was in a hospital there. And I remember my journey to the, and what he told me. In short, the point is that that is not a period to which you could look through nostalgia. In fact, I look at it with great disturbance and annoyance and anger. As an Indian poet, my position would be different. Secondly, we began the sessions with by mourning the killings of our people. And the great poet, I like the poem incidentally for its imagistic thing. that if you went to Islamabad, of course the streets are good and nice, very good for them. I don't think any normal Indian would think of immediately bombing it. There might be someone who really was with you. It might be a real incident, all right. But I think it is neither a historical truth nor a poetic truth. So on these two counts, while I admire you in every other way,
Thank you, thank you. Yes, Asha, please.
Look, sir, you should know about Afghanistan's situation right now. If you have about 40 years fighting in your country, you must write your poem in bombing word and suicide attack word and fighting word and gun and others. You know, the words make a poem. When you are face to face with fighting, with gun, with bombing, when shooting, with other bad words. I mean, so your poem became naturally violence and violence. So I mean that. So I didn't agree with this point that we should have the violence poetry. But I think that the words which we make our poem will be there to be bad words, like I said. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What you said is interesting because I think that poetry cannot fix the bleak facts of violence, but it can bear witness to the consequences of violence. That's two different things, actually, and we see the poets doing it very often. Yes?
Yeah, my name is Mangesh Aral, I write in Hindi. So indeed we are living in very extremely violent times. And there are 100 kinds of violence, political violence, social violence, domestic violence, and violence where there is no bloodshed. So there are very minute forms of violence. And in India, it's in fact one of the most violent times. So, but I often wonder, what is the role of poetry? Is it to record, it is to be a recorder or a chronicler or a documenter of the violence, of the contemporary violence, or does it protest? So I would wonder. So I put same to you, and associated with this question is that when Qazi Nazrul Islam says we go and break open prison, so is he using violent words, as somebody has said? So or those are the words of protest. So what is the difference between violent words and the words of protest?
Thank you very much. I think what our Vietnamese poet referred to when he said that he's in exile, it reminded me of Thomas Mann, you know, when he left Nazism and he arrived outside Germany, and they asked him, so what are you going to do, you who have been writing in German? And he responded, wherever I am, there is German culture. Wo ich bin, das ist deutsche Kultur. So it's the same with poets, you know. I mean, poets, they take their poetry with them, in exile or everywhere. So that's the most important way that the poets have been fighting against violence, because they might not live in killing fields with Taliban, emergency, or today's India, or Bangladesh, or Iran, or everywhere else where it's violence, but their poetry lives outside, even in exile. That's very, very important, I think. Are there any other interventions? Yes? Oh, or, yeah, I thought that Mahmoud Darwish actually, very much. bearing witness to violence?
Actually, I have to say something which may sound violent. I have a problem in the cultural discourse when intellectuals and poets not examining the words. Yani the word violence, when we think of it, I'm seeing that you are taking it as granted, like violence. So what violence which we are really talking about? And the same thing with the word peace. For me, nothing horrifies me in the dictionary more than the word peace. The most hypocritical word, the most stupid word, the most word which hides a lot of atrocities inside it. Going back to violence, the violence of the world now, I think we are not thinking or even bringing to discussion the violence of capitalism. I think societies are suffering from the violence of capitalism and from new liberal politics in the world. This is one. Second, we are suffering from the violence of democracy, which brings to office the most stupid men and women nowadays in the world, from the United States to wherever you want. I think our role is to examine the language. Second thing, when we are talking about violence, we forgot, I think if a man like Franz Fanon, if he would be with us in this hall, he would be shouting now. Because the concept of revolutionary violence is almost absent. The violence now is maintained by superpowers on nations, on populations, on poor people, and they are almost without voice. And from my experience, I think the violence of hypocrisy is very huge nowadays. The violence of stupidity is also very huge. And there is a lot of victims of hypocrisy and stupidity more than words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that this is your first time in India, isn't it?
Second time.
Second time? You should give some more readings about what Indians write and people like me write, because we have been writing a great deal about what you said, and exactly what you said. I've been writing it in 3 books. You know, the last one, The Disobedient Indian, which was with a preface of Ashok Lachwe. No, I know, but I'm telling you that what you say is very, very true, actually. Yes, of course, we can talk about the violence of capitalism, but when you say that we use the word violence, actually I teach non-violence, you know, and that's when you teach non-violence, you're already refuting the concept of violence itself, and this is the right country to talk about that, actually, I would say. Yes, yes.
Just to clarify, when I said that I'm almost nostalgic about emergency, it didn't mean I have a nostalgia for emergency. I was saying that compared to what we face today and have been facing recently, living in Modi's India, living in India governed by Sangh Parivar, the proto-fascists that have taken over everything here, emergency almost looks like, you know, heaven. That's what I meant. You are a poet, you should know what the irony is. The other thing is, the violence of Gujarat, the state from which you come and the Prime Minister comes, was horrific, of course you would agree. But equally horrific for me has been the great silence of Gujarat. The silence of its political class, a silence of its intelligentsia. And I don't see many Gujaratis introspecting about it. And this is a concern because I belong to the same arena, to the same field to which you belong. These are the things that bother me. I wonder why it should be bothering, tearing apart the very internal world of a Gujarati poet, a Gujarati politician, a Gujarati social scientist. There are, of course, honorable exceptions. There are people who have taken up the cause, the civil rights movement of Gujarat, that I don't want, nobody can deny. In fact, they are the only ones who have done something. But overall cultural silence over the genocide, over the decades and decades have passed, and you don't see even the first authentic cultural voice emerging against it. So the silence and peace can also be very problematic words. These are the curtains through which one hides so much of horror of one's society. That's what I wanted to see. I endorse Mezwan's position about it.
Thank you very much. Are there any other interventions? Very briefly, yeah? I don't want it to become controversial.
The point is that there are many voices of Indian poetry. Our country is so large and we know so much, so little, sometimes of each other, that an impression might have been created on you, and has been created on some other people also, that in a certain region there is not enough protest. Now there are protests and protests. For example, if I want you to protest exactly the way I protest, and if you do not protest the way I protest, then also you are not protesting. The point is that let us also have a symphony of protest, rather than sticking to our own kind of how should I say, the brand is not a proper word, but a brand of protest. So let's have a symphony so that we are more effective and not really, we must, sometimes the problem would be with my voice. Sometimes the problem would be with Ashokji's ear, and both the problems are possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, I would like to invite Ashok Bajpayee to come and do the closing of this 3 days Biennale, and I'm sure that he has very interesting points to say. And after that, we can have tea and biscuits and continue our discussions.
Well, friends, first of all, let me thank all of you, whether agreeing or not agreeing with each other. In fact, we thought there will be a symphony of disagreement and debate and dissent. You can't be expecting dissent outside unless you have dissent in your own community. So that's fine. I have entered my 80th year recently, and I had never imagined that I would still be able to listen to so much good poetry being written in Asia. I am a despairing man. There's a lot to despair in our situation in India. And yet, somehow, I cannot recall with a bit of nostalgia, although nostalgia is supposed to be under some kind of an attack. The nostalgia that I organized the first Asian Poetry Festival in Bharat Bhavan in 1988, which is exactly 30 years ago. And it was then that I thought that there is a community of voices which ought to be heard with attention, sensitivity, with alertness, with a sense of responsibility. And I tried my best in the 30 years to try to find resources to do that again. And luckily for me, I had a great friend, Syed Raza, who gave me the resources to organize this. I must clarify to all the friends here that this is being done entirely out of the money of a great artist. We have not taken any assistance from any government nor of any corporate house. So we are neither part of a totalitarian sounding regime nor complicit with the capitalistic structures that have come into being. We had, of course, very interesting voices, from love to violence, from murder to having rain in your bag. We had one of the senior-most poets in the world, perhaps, with us, and we had a very young Cambodian who burst into the song at the slightest opportunity. And we had a very wide range of voices. What is important is that there are so many hundreds of ways of being and remaining human in our time. Whatever may be our land, whatever may be our circumstances, whatever may be the constraints that we suffer from, whatever may be the land of native land or exile, wherever we are, the poets are trying to remain human and to remind you that under all circumstances we can remain human. That's the big assurance to us. Kafka once said, "Oh, writers are subhuman." Perhaps we are subhuman, although Rilke said that we are bees of the invisible. So we pick up the invisible and make it visible. That might be the art of poetry. They have said that we have been witness. Are we witness or are we chronicle? We are complicit witness. We witness, but we are complicit in what we are witnessing. It is not as if we say, oh, all this violence is done by others. We are also part of that violence as citizens, sometimes even as writers. So it's a very mixed world. We cannot take a high moral ground and say that we have not been, we have failed many a time, we have collapsed sometimes, we have had in dark times, and yet, in spite of all these, as I said, difficulties and constraints, I think Shiva's Heaney famously said, poetry will be failure if it loses its covenant with truth and justice. Now, truth can be severally defined. What is your truth may not be my truth. What is your take on truth may not be my take on truth. But essentially, what are we fighting for? All the dissent and the protest is for retaining the plurality of the world, plurality of viewpoints, plurality of visions, plurality of expressions, plurality of languages. We are writing poetry, hopefully, in a sensitive idiom as against the totally banal, uniform, and ironed out language. There are several languages which are facing extinction. And the language that we are talking about is the language which is born out of the love and lure of the world. We celebrate the world. We continue to question it. We continue to look for alternatives. We reject many parts of it. We fight passionately against certain aspects of it. But the world given to you. And this is the only world given to me and to all poets. And the poets in some way or the other celebrate the world. So thank you very much for being here, celebrating the world, revealing to us the world we did not imagine existed, revealing to us many, many dark areas which we have overlooked, and also giving us the light of conscience and courage and imagination. Life, as I said in the beginning, we celebrate life all the time, poets. Sometimes life should celebrate poetry. And we hope that the past 3 days we have allowed life to celebrate poetry. We are very few in terms of management team, 2.5. almost. And yet we have managed. And there might have been lapses and inconveniences, sometimes lack of communication, etc. We had a Georgian poet who could not come because she wanted, we should send the visa from here to her instead of her applying to the embassy, which is the usual procedure. But anyway, if there have been any inconveniences, please excuse us. We hope to remain in touch. We hope to keep a watchful eye on all of you. Watchful only to see that you continue in your own line to celebrate the word, to question the word, and by doing that, to validate the word for all of us in language. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Raza Foundation and on behalf of the India International Center, whose collaborators, including Vadhera Art Gallery and Akar Prakar Gallery, which provided some hospitality elements. We thank every one of you. It's a pity that not many people in this rather illiterate capital of the country came to listen to poetry. But those who came, go back with as little of light, perhaps a better understanding of the darkness that surrounds us. Thank you very much. And now, please have tea. I hope it is served.